Now, I don't know about you, but I've spent decades paying money to somebody called McAfee. I actually never knew that it was a person, just a faceless corporation that I was paying money to protect my computer. So far, so good, but not for Mr. McAfee, for he was indeed a real person. McAfee, John McAfee, as we would call him in this country, McAfee as he's known in the United States, was, well, take your pick. Like Jeffrey Epstein, he may have genuinely committed suicide. Or like Jeffrey Epstein, the suicide may have come as a big surprise to him. One man has studied this matter in very great detail. He is the author and ghostwriter Mark Eglinton, and he joins us now. A ghostwriter, huh, Mark? I think you should write McAfee's posthumous memoirs. Tell us why you're interested and why we should be.
Well, let me explain and tell you that this book actually is his memoirs. John contacted me in 2019 while he was on the run and said, I want you to ghostwrite my autobiography. And that's what we agreed to do. However, given how complex his situation was, that situation changed halfway through the process when he wanted cryptocurrency from a publisher, didn't have an address to contact with, et cetera, et cetera. So he ended up pulling out of the project, leaving me with it. And this book that is coming out towards the end of the year is conversations between he and I, which are essentially his life story. So, I mean, when you say that I should ghostwrite his memoirs, I more or less have, because almost all the words are his. So that's where we are.
Why was he of interest to you?
I mean, John, I don't know how much the listeners know about John. John lived the most incredible life in every sense. I mean, the pre-McAfee years, before he even, I mean, the company he founded, which you referred to earlier, was founded by accident. He had no aspirations whatsoever to be a corporate figure. He was somebody who enjoyed living, and earning money was simply a means to continue living. And when he walked away from McAfee Associates in 1992, he didn't sell it. People think that he sold out. He didn't. He just walked away. But also what happened was he benefited greatly from the flotation of the company on the stock exchange at that time. So he had unlimited money. And from that point onward, he did basically what he wanted in life, built houses, traveled to foreign countries, literally got bounced around by the chaos of the world, which is easy to do, granted, if you have upwards of $100 million. But that's the kind of life he lived. And he was just fascinating. And I just thought, I couldn't believe he'd never written an autobiography. And the fact that he was on the run at the time when he was contacting me made it even more appealing. I just couldn't believe that there was a situation where I could write a book with a guy who was on the run. And that's what we did. So, yeah, that brings us to now. And sadly, John won't be here to read this book when it comes out later this year.
Well, I don't know. Maybe that's a good thing for the sales or not. It's certainly a new layer of mystery, isn't it? He was a rum character, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, anyone who knows anything about John knows he went to Belize. They will know that he ran from Belize when he was being framed by the Belizean government while also being accused of a murder. A murder I firmly believe, based on all the conversations I had with him, he did not commit. Nevertheless, he faked a heart attack in Guatemala. He's faked a stroke elsewhere while on the run. This is a guy whose life force, even at the age of 74, which he was when I was talking to him, was undiminished. So, you know, people have asked me numerous times in the aftermath of his sad death, do I think that John committed suicide? And, you know, I'll never have the answer to that, the definitive answer. What I will say is that there was nothing in any of the conversations I ever had with him which suggested that he didn't want to keep living. You know, that's all I can say. All of his moves that he's made over the last 3 or 4 years have been designed to keep living. So that's all I can say about that part of it.
Well, can you say why there might be any doubt that he committed suicide?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, it's well known. He made it well known that he was being pursued by the CIA. He firmly believed that. He believed that. I mean, his stance on taxation in the US was one whereby he hadn't filed tax returns. Not only that, I mean, there's plenty of people who don't file tax returns, but he was going out on a public stage discussing cryptocurrency. Now, cryptocurrency, as some people might think, is a means of avoiding paying tax. He was going around on a yacht telling people, I haven't filed tax returns, and here's how you don't have to either. And he believes that he became a problem to the US government to the extent that somebody might try and collect him. And he told me that on a number of occasions. And in fact, some of the conversations in the book are about his knowledge of the intricacies of how the CIA works. Because this is a man who supplied the CIA in his early days of McAfee Associates. He knew how that operation worked.
And where did he die, commit suicide, or was killed?
In a prison in Barcelona.
How was he, why was he in a prison in Barcelona?
Well, he was on the run when I was talking to him for the book that we did together. And what I didn't know at the time was that he was on the run in Spain. And at some point during 2020, he boarded a flight in Barcelona airport on a UK passport. He was a dual UK and US citizen and was apprehended by people presumably contracted by the US authorities on a flight to Istanbul. And from there, he was imprisoned in Barcelona pending deportation to the US.
And he made some kind of prediction, like others, that he would be suicided by the authorities, didn't he?
Yeah, the whacked theory is one that he put out there a year and a half before his death, to the extent he got a tattoo with whacked on his arm and posted on Twitter that if he is ever whacked, that he didn't do it. It would be, he was comparing his situation to Epstein and was indeed suggesting that Epstein didn't commit suicide. So yeah, he did kind of predict it. But this was the kind of thing John did. John was somebody who liked manipulating his public persona. He enjoyed doing that. It could easily be a red herring.
Yeah. Was there an investigation into his death? Was there a proper coroner's inquiry or the Catalan equivalent?
Well, things have been slow in Spain. He died on June the 23rd. There was an initial autopsy that ruled suicide, which was disputed by his wife, Janice, who's in Spain now. There's been various legal to and fro up to the point when the Spanish authorities, I think Spain shuts down in August, essentially for a holiday. And my understanding is that there is more to come from this in September, later on this month, in fact, when Spain opens up again. But it's certainly not resolved. I wouldn't like to say that this is resolved at this point. It's still very much open.
And how much of his $100 million did he get through, and how much does Janice stand to inherit?
He was broke. I said this to another source when I was asked after his death. I firmly believe John had no money when he died. And people say, oh, well, how can you have $100 million? And that was conservative, that number. But this is a guy, and as I said to you earlier, he enjoyed just living. And in the book, he talks about building houses in Ecuador, spending $25 million on a house that he never set foot in. He built half a dozen houses of this kind all over the US, in Hawaii, in Belize. Never bothered about even going to any of them, or some of them. So this wasn't somebody who was bothered about spending money. And I believe that by the time he was imprisoned, he was basically bankrupt.
And does his wife think he was whacked?
She doesn't believe he committed suicide. And I, for the same reasons I don't. I mean, he was eternally positive. Her last communication with him was earlier that day, where he said, I love you, I'll talk to you tomorrow, type of thing. There was no suggestion that this was on his mind. And John's somebody who would be pretty honest about that kind of thing. I'm pretty sure that if he had this kind of thing on his mind, he wouldn't mind saying so, and he didn't.
Was he alone in his cell when he passed away?
He was. That part of it's a bit confusing. There was a cellmate who was with John during the time in prison. The cellmate was not there at the time of his death. That part of it is a bit cloudy, as is the aspect of the CCTV footage from the cell at the time. That's something that's still to come out.
So tell us about the book. What's it called? Where can we get it and when?
The book is called No Domain, The John McAfee Tapes. And basically this is John McAfee and I sitting down for over 6 months and me talking about his life to him and him talking back. And John was a myth in the public eye, even a meme. But the John McAfee that I spoke to was the actual person. I'm convinced that I got a vision of him through these conversations nobody's ever seen before. And it's just fascinating. His insight into human nature, into cryptocurrency, into internet security, into privacy, the workings of government is just fascinating. And it will be out later this year. The publication date is to be confirmed because obviously when he passed, we tried to move that date up, which we're still trying to do, but it will be later this year. I'm hoping November. And it will be available at all good bookstores, Amazon, all the usual bookstores. And I can't wait for people to read it.
You may have a big seller on your hands. Thank you very much, Mark Eglinton, author of and ghostwriter of No Domain, the McAfee tapes.